Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Lunatics. This is a big one. I am joined by a legend of the comics industry, Miss Ann Nocenti. How are you, ma'am?
Hi, happy to be here. Hello out there.
Hello. And yes, I reached out because Storm #1 is out. Another one. I'm loving these miniseries from Marvel, like the flashback series. These are great. And I assume I'm always like, well, how do we get more of these? I'm sure you'll say, write in or vote with your dollars, right? Just
Well, I think that people have this feeling that a story in the past doesn't count because it's the past, but it's sort of, I want to say it's almost like getting to go backstage or see something behind the scenes because for Storm, Mark Basso and Drew, my editors, who were just fabulous to work with. We had done X-Men Legends, and I got to. It's sort of for me as somebody who hadn't played with those characters in 30 years. I was able to say, you know what? I reread the miniseries after not having read it forever. And then I thought, you know what? This is like, I really want to do more with the triangle of Mojo, Majordomo, and Spiral. Like, I realized that, like, wow, I had fun and there are a few scenes. Now I want more. So it's kind of like with Storm, Mark and Drew just said, well, let's do this again. And how about Punk Storm? And Punk Storm happened when I was in the X-Men office, but I was Louise Simons' assistant. So I was just sort of learning. I was learning like, a kid really right out of college. And I was learning I was kind of just like watching Wheezy and absorbing and the fountain of creativity that is Chris Claremont, because he really is quite spectacular. He just has a zillion ideas. So I hadn't read those stories since I was an assistant editor on them or whatever was going on at the time. And when I reread them, I just read them as a fan and thought, wow, the moment when Storm shows up with her mohawk and Kitty like blows up, I'm like, I want more of that. And then something like about bringing Rogue into the mix, bringing an enemy into your ranks, it probably I thought about it 30 years ago when Chris came up with the idea, but it was really struck me is that there's more to mine here, especially because of the Mystique Storm dynamic and how now Storm has Mystique's daughter, and the triangulation there with the triangulation of Storm and Logan kind of being Kitty's surrogate parents, and then suddenly their kid is rebelling, and Storm is kind of like, I got to step up as leader here. I don't have time for your teenage pouts. So between her having to change, all her relationships change when you become the leader. I mean, if anybody can just imagine you're hanging out with all your friends and then something happens and suddenly you're the boss of your friends, everything would change subtly. So I was able to sort of look like, well, who are her confidants? Does she create a certain remove as you have to do as a boss? So it really, the whole thing came out of just reading Chris's stories and going, between these two panels and between this issue and this issue, there's all this rich stuff. And that you have to give to Chris Claremont, because a lot of his stories had weird Easter eggs that he never picked up on again, or so much richness in the fabric of the interpersonal relationships that you can just sort of go, wow, there's a place here. And then on top of that, of course, because you don't want it to be just the past, I just said, you know what, she should have a romance. So I gave her a new romance right at exactly metaphorically, not like literally, right at the point when her powers are starting to mutate and out of her control, which is almost like the whole mutant thing of you get your powers when you hit adolescence. Maybe you mutate later on too. When your hormones rush because you fall in love. So it's like all this like fun stuff to play with.
Oh yeah, like I said, I love this era, and I'm sure this has been cooking in the back of your mind for years and years. But yeah, like you said, especially the Claremont stuff. I mean, he was there for so long, and so much was going on, and there was so much change, especially in this era. I mean, th- this era is so ripe for these miniseries because there, like you said, there is so much like that's been hasn't been touched, or just because.
Yeah, and actually it's not at all something that's been brewing in my mind for years. I kind of like, because I just after I left Marvel in the 80s and moved on to be a journalist and a filmmaker and all kinds of other stuff, I didn't it not nothing was really brewing in my mind. It was really just rereading those issues 30 years later, and I was able to put myself as a fan, literally like be a fan and go, wow. So the other thing is that like telescoping time is also fun because it's like 40 years ago is kind of 4 years.
Mhm.
If you figure every decade is a year. So in, Kitty's 13 or 14 in this story, whereas now she's maybe 21, maybe she's of legal age, I don't know. But so they're really, you have to place them early in their careers. They're young, they're still making mistakes, but it's really only 4 years later, even though it's 40 years of stories. So you have to kind of telescope time, and there's all kinds of sort of fun things to do. There's no internet, but there was a kind of thing in the 80s called, CompuServe and different like the beginnings of computers. And so, you're like, okay, let's give Kitty a computer to do her sleuthing on. And then you look at what I did was I Drew and Mark sent me a bunch of current X-Men so that I could see, wow, Storm is now like this superstar, and I could say, and Kitty is now Kate Pride. And so you look at you kind of concede the future in the earlier stories. So that's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, sorry. It's just interesting. As a writer, are you tempted to use like hindsight because you know where these characters are going to be, years from now, or you
I
just like, I
wasn't,
don't want to do that, or
I mean, the thing is because I'm always working as a writer, the only way we stay afloat is to keep writing. And so I didn't read 30 years of X-Men. I
yeah.
didn't know what was going on. And then uh, Mark and Drew sent me some issues. So I was able to kind of see the end point. But no, I really just wanted to play in Chris's playground, like play with the toys just as they were in Chris's sandbox,
Mhm.
with just an eye to the future. Um, yeah.
So this thing is so pure. It's like you could basically file this, around that era, and it seemed to me it read like you could have published this in the '80s and not missed a beat.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and especially the two artists are so great. We have Sid Cotian, I don't know if I'm saying his name right or wrong, and Geralde Jorges. So we have Sid doing the first two and Geraldo stepping in for the second half. And they're both kind of channeling their late 80s, early 90s
Yeah.
thing. I mean, they're both sort of, I think Mark and Drew are very smart when they pick the artist. They probably didn't want too much of a modern designy artist that would be so much of this current era. So it's just exciting, fast moving, comics like they were. And in fact, even the opening is an 80s opening. In the 80s, you had to have establish all the characters using their powers right in the beginning of the story for the new reader. And, I respect that 80s sensibility because I had all these other mysterious, weird, eerie ways to start the story, with Storm's powers mutating. And then I went, you know what? Just go 80s style, just go classic, you know, introduce characters actively through use of their powers, which was one of our directives back then.
Yeah, I mean, that does remind me Claremont to be like, oh, okay, open up. Oh, here's Wolverine. He's the best description, the best there is of what he does. And
Here's what he does, yeah.
And I find it interesting too that it's like this is Storm's book, so it's like we can't that big fight in the beginning. It kind of shows us kind of how she views the X-Men, at least in a battle situation. Just to basically okay, put this one here, against just her strategic mind. Yeah,
everybody has a strategy, and I think Cyclops was also kind of a strategic leader, but other leaders are and it's also the contrast. Mystique is obviously not much of a leader. She just almost doesn't really care at all about her team. She just tosses them into the mix, and then so I think it was also to do with a bit of a contrast between, because Mystique goes all the way through the series and becomes a big player. And so, but she has sort of this disdain for her own Blob and Avalanche and, Pyro. I think she thinks they're a bunch of idiots or something,
Well, yeah, I mean,
she doesn't love her team other than Rogue. She doesn't love, it's not like the X-Men. So I wanted to make that both for the Rogue switching sides, most importantly, yeah, of course, switch sides.
Yeah, because like you said, Storm and Wolverine kind of act as Kitty's surrogate mother and father. Storm, sees her team as a family. You could tell Mystique is just this is a job. These are my employees.
Yeah.
Just get do what I say.
Yeah, and that's even when Logan says still working for chump wages, that's he's like, yeah, I bet she's not even paying you much,
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and just then what is it? Mystique just lying to Rogue or whoever why they're doing this. It's like no, they get paid. No, they're a grand thing. They're just getting paid. And just Wolverine threatening Pyra. Oh yeah, with the whole chump. That's where the chump change the line comes in. Yes. But yeah, again, it's just I love this. That it's set in a great time period, and I love we get that actual. This takes place around what issue 176. So they gave you the top, your editors gave you what time period to put this in.
Yeah, I think they just were basically Punk Storm. She's just become the leader. And I think I could have pitched something else. I could have pitched Storm on a solo adventure, on the road. There were moments when I thought, hey, she's just on the road alone. But, I think her relationship with Kitty and that the Rogue's introduction into the team, it was too intriguing for me not to do those two fun moments. So I kind of decided nah. And then also just to give her a romance, and she's a weather elemental. And Mark sent me a Storm miniseries. I'm going to blank on who wrote it. I'm such an idiot, but it was so good. It was just what was it called? It was it really explored, because my pitch to Mark was what if we explore we kind of layer a little bit of current climate change on it and explore what are the ramifications of, pouring rain here, do you cause a drought there? And he was kind of well, that's been done, but do it anyway. And then he sent me this mini series that was just so beautiful. I can't believe I can't remember. We'll have to look at it. I'll look it up and send you.
Okay.
And it was just, it kind of dealt a little bit with that notion of, uh, are there repercussions? So obviously there can't really be repercussions because she can't be Storm anymore.
Mhm.
But for a while we can explore that. So
Yeah, that's the one thing I was pleasantly surprised about, because I thought that was what this book was going to be, is just her on her own. But we did get so much with the X-Men also in the beginning, so it was kind of like a happy mix of both. Her as a team leader and as a woman on her own.
yeah, so she goes off with, because she's falling in love and her powers are mutating. She
Mhm.
does go off, but the X-Men or stay through the whole series.
That's good. And how many issues is this?
5.
Okay, 5. I guess I'll have to be enough, because I was gonna say that's not enough. uh, uh, oh, and then the Teen Rebellion with Kitty getting her tattoo. So
Yeah, I mean, she's like, you can change your outfit, I can change my outfit. It's sort of like, it's so, I mean, again, it's all Chris Claremont. It's like I'm almost like channeling Chris, and if Chris had had more issues to explore that moment. But when you're doing a monthly, you just have to kind of gallop ahead to the next villain and the next scenario and the next whatever.
yeah.
So, and I love how, even though, I can't really remember, because I haven't read those stories in forever. I can't really remember what Kitty and Rogue's relationship was, but I'm sort of thinking, if Kitty's going to go if Kitty's going to have a rebellion of all the X-Men, Rogue's the one who'll be like, they don't trust me, they don't like me, I'm the villain, but at least I can go do these girl bonding with Kitty, and I can go be bad with her. So they're kind of like partners in crime. Rogue is just desperate for some love from the X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
He's missing Mystique, obviously, and Destiny. Those are her parents. And so she's kind of ripe to make false moves, like, you know.
I mean, I can't remember like a lot with them, but it does make sense to me, because because with Kitty's Teen Rebellion, and these two are like the two newest members, so it's like, the rest of them have been working together for a while and have this bigger bond, and so yeah, I could see Kitty and Rogue bonding over just the, hey, we're the newer ones around here, and
Yeah, it's like when you move towns, your parents drag you from one high school to the next, and then there you are, and everybody's already got their cliques and their gangs, and there's one person in the group, Kitty, who is like feeling lost, feeling like Storm's abandoned her, and she's ripe for a new female friendship. So, and it just dovetails that they're both just as ornery, that Rogue is the orneriest. I mean, she couldn't have gone to town and gotten a tattoo with any of the others. They would have been, don't do it,
yeah. I mean, is it possible after this, would they let you spin off another miniseries out of this? Like, oh, hey, what were Rogue and Kitty up to while Storm was off doing whatever?
It's funny because, I've spent a lot of time in the South, and I kind of know the kind of wonderful sort of roundabout storytelling of Southern. It's like one of the great things about my Southern friends is that they like shaggy dog tales, and they like metaphor, and they like telling a story about this as a way to give you a point about that. And when I was writing Rogue, I was doing the best I could to channel my Southern girlfriends. I even had one girlfriend. I was like, okay, read all Rogue's dialogue and tell me if you'd say this or not. And she'd go, oh, I'd say that. I'd say that. Oh, I wouldn't say that. And I just cut the line, but, I remember thinking, like the great Southern writers, like, Tennessee Williams, or who was the Carson McCullers, or any, And I kept thinking it would be so awesome to have a young female Southern writer write Rogue.
Mm.
So when you ask, like, would I do it again? I would be like, I don't know. I think I think a Southern girl should write Rogue.
Mm.
Somebody who just already speaks. Because, in writing comics, you have to do all these different dialects and patois, and you're an imposter. You're like, okay, I'm going to pretend to be Southern, and okay, I'm going to pretend to be German. Okay, I'm going to pretend, to be Storm. And, so there is something to, because I'm also doing writing Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel lives in Harpswell, Maine, and I've spent a lot of time in Maine, and so I'm like, I know how Mainers talk, so I can. But you can only keep it up for so long because it's not your authentic voice; it's your channeling. So so yeah, that would be my answer to that. Let's find somebody from the South to write Storm. I mean, to write Rogue.
Yeah. I think this era would be interesting because it's like she is trying to, become a hero, and it's like, how do you prove after working with Mystique and her group? How do you prove yourself a hero? What's that journey like, especially in the early days? Because again, there's so much in this era. Because as hard as it is to believe, we only had one X-Men book at this time. Now you have so many X-Men books. Back then, there was so much untouched because we only had one X-Men book.
Well, yeah, except that there were. I mean, by the time I was the editor, we had a Kitty Pryde miniseries.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We had with Wolverine, it was Wolverine and Kitty Pryde. We had I mean, we had this we had just started doing the minis where we would solo Wolverine, Kitty and Wolverine. And then the New Mutants, especially once Bill Sienkiewicz got on the book, became like the adjunct, they were like the up and coming Xavier's gifted youngster kids. So you had that. And then there was, of course, there were a couple others, X-Force and X-Factor,
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure there were other miniseries that we did that I'm blanking on. I mean, I did a Beast and Dazzler, so you're right. For a long time, there was just one X-Men book, but because the sales were going up and up and up and up and up because of Chris, Chris was just like bringing in new readers, and his operatic yet interpersonal. It was always interpersonal and then boom opera, then interpersonal, then boom opera, and it was so compelling that the sales were just like whoop, and and then I left the company in like 1990 or something like that.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I remember the era of Chris, and then for a while there, he was working with one of your former partners in crime, John Romita Jr.
Oh yeah. I love Johnny.
Oh
I'd
yeah.
work with Johnny again in a heartbeat. I mean, he's a dream artist. It's just, but I think it's also the times. Like back in those days, everybody was right in New York and in the offices and hanging with each other. And we had a softball team and we would all go out together and go to the movies together. And so, me and Johnny would just, riff on stories, ideas. I just ran into Johnny at a Comic-Con, and we had done this story, A Beer with the Devil, that everyone like seemed to love, and because it was based on literally me having nowhere to go one Christmas and deciding to go to a strip bar because that's who I am, and I just was like remembering that, and then Johnny reminded me. He said, we were out someplace having a beer, and I said, why don't we do a story where the devil meets God? And so he literally wanted it to be a beer with God. And that was the spark that started the whole story rolling. And then Johnny and I were both like, who would be in a bar on Christmas Eve with nowhere to go? And then, that story came out of just hanging with your artist. And a lot of times now everybody's digital. You'll never meet them. They live in another country, and you
Yeah.
don't have that kind of energy anymore. Often there's a language barrier. I'm working the Captain Marvel book. I don't know if you know the work of Paolo Villanelli. He's mostly done like Star Wars and that universe.
Okay, I think I've seen I may have seen some of his work. Yeah.
He is amazing.
Hmm.
He's like he's a dream to work with. It's like it's this kinetic, fast moving, and tender and beautiful all at once, and you can throw anything at him and he can do it, and it's just like, wow, so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna say. Is that the biggest challenge where it's like, yeah, it's nice with our new digital world that you get so many a variety of more voices, creative voices, but now is it harder that you're not in the same room? So you're like, you send like your notes or whatever, and you're like, is this artist are we gonna click? Are they gonna get what I'm trying to put across?
Yeah, and there's often a lot of like language barrier, and and if you're not talking to people, like email really ruins communication because people read the email and get it wrong and
Yeah.
think something's going on that's not going on. The human voice and the human face, it's
Yeah.
like so powerful to be in real life with your co-creator. But so do I miss those days? Yes. But do I recognize that it is so much more efficient and also so much easier to embrace international artists? Paola Villanelli lives in Italy. Sid Kotian lives in Mumbai, India. Geraldo Borges lives in Chile, so, and it's been fun working with all three. And it's just not, it's not something that was possible before.
But me and my one co-host, we were talking about that convention you were at with John Romita Jr. because once a month we talk to DG Chichester. We do a
Oh
show with
yeah.
him once a month. He was there and he was telling us how much fun it was. So,
Oh, it was so much fun. But plus Dan Chichester, I don't know how to say his name, Johnny, we got to meet Charlie Cox.
Yes, that's what he said. Yeah.
We got to meet Daredevil, and we were like, we're meeting Daredevil, and he was so nice. Charlie Cox is like the nicest guy. And then Vince D'Onofrio was
Yes.
just finishing up his panel, and his line was empty, and there was no one there. And I was with Chris Claremont and Johnny, and I was like, let's just go meet Vince, And they were like, Annie, no, you can't. Johnny is like so respectful and never wants to bother anyone, and I'm like, we're doing it. I'm doing it. Come with me. And then we just went right up to him, and we were like, hi, this is Chris Claremont, and me and Johnny, we did Daredevil stories together, and he knew exactly who we were. He was so happy to meet us. And he even was like, wow, if you ever want to get together and talk Daredevil. And we were like, both like, yeah. And then, but of course, like, nobody said, what's your number? But, but the funniest thing was, I love Chip Zdarsky. Chip Zdarsky is just so talented and hilarious. And he just is, he's so sly and humorous. And I've been loving his run. And he, me and Johnny created Typhoid Mary.
Yes.
Typhoid Mary just got married to the Kingpin. So I was able to say to Vince, in the comic world, you're married to me and Johnny. And he just cracked up, I mean, they're really nice people. Now, of course, it's sad that the writer's strike is with the writer's strike. I was WGA for 10 years when I was writing films and living, doing the whole LA Hollywood thing. And so I know the problems with, everybody thinks, oh, the Writers Guild, they're big Hollywood writers. But no, it includes like every indie, like, I never got paid a lot for a script. I had what the WGA called an indie contract, but they still go to bat for you, and you need them. And
Oh
you
my
know, the Writers Guild is saying something's happening here with general intelligence or whatever AI chat GPT-4 and the diffusion, like they're starting to just rip us all off. And so I'm really glad they're leading the charge, but at the same time they had to stop production of the Daredevil.
Oh, I know. I can't wait for that.
I
Yeah.
know, I'm so excited about it, and I'm like, oh, I hope the WGA, I hope they get everything they want so Daredevil can go back in production.
Because I think they said that's a big one. That's not in like your usual 8 or 10 episode thing. I think they said it's like 18 episodes or something
Well,
that
it's also
Daredevil.
because, like, the Netflix deal, when the Netflix deal fell apart, and you know, Jeff Loeb, who was the showrunner, had all these plans for, the interweaving of all of the Luke Cage and Jessica,
Yeah.
whatever her name, Jones, and
Jones, yeah.
Daredevil and Iron Fist, and he had all this like multi-weaving narratives, and then it all had to be shut down. So people have been waiting way too long already for Daredevil to come back, and now it finally is. And the thing with actors, they're like, hey, I'm a year older. Oh wait, now I'm 2 years older.
But the other thing about Daredevil coming out next year, do you think will they ask you and will you accept? Would you do it like another flashback series like the Storm one if they asked you to do something Daredevil?
Well, it's funny. Me and Johnny were talking about how it would be fun to do something together again. And
Mhm.
of course, we both would love to do a Daredevil story. But I think he's super busy on Spider-Man, and I'm super
Oh
busy on Storm and Captain Marvel. So we were both kind of like, if we ever have a window, we'll come up with something and pitch it. Cause we're in the business, but we still have to pitch and get rejected. So we have pitched something and hopefully it won't get rejected. And then the idea would be to bring Klaus Janson in for the inks, which would be
Oh, yeah.
great, because sadly Al Williamson is not with us, who was, in my mind, like,
Mhm.
the Daredevil inked by Al Williamson was, amazing.
Mm.
So yeah, so if it happens, it happens, yeah. But we have to come up with the story, pitch it, and both have enough time.
Yeah. Because I mean, you've done so much in the industry, but like the first time I read Daredevil, it was your run. So that's like I hear your name. That's the first thing that pops in my mind is Daredevil.
Oh yeah, no, and it's funny, I go to conventions, and I always want to promote my new work, but
Mhm.
the poster they do is always Daredevil. And I'm like, what about Storm and Captain Marvel? And what about my indie work like The Seeds? And they're like, nah, let's just keep Daredevil up there. So
I mean, I guess that's the curse. I mean, you put out something, I mean, all your work is good, but I mean, I guess that Daredevil just speaks to so many people and just
yeah, and
everyone's like,
it's
"Oh
fine
yeah,
by me. It's fine by me because the conventions have their whole numerics. They have like, they got to make money. They got to, they fly you in, but you got to return, their investment in you. And so it's the Daredevil stuff that people are bringing up to me to sign. And when I see somebody bring The Seeds or Ruby Falls up, I want to get up and hug them, because, oh wow, you read my indie work, my recent indie work,
yeah." Oh, I mean, if you're free, I would love to talk to you about that Captain Marvel when that comes out.
Yeah, sure, yeah, I think it's another 2 months, or I don't know, a month. I don't know.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, because the current series I think is wrapping up in a like they're
Yeah, and
going
that's
into
again like, just like this Storm series is definitely, like an homage to a Chris Claremont story.
Mhm.
The Captain Marvel series I'm writing is definitely a homage to Kelly Sue DeConnick and Kelly Johnson, because like both of their runs, I mean,
Oh yeah,
great, and they are Carol Danvers. So it's again me channeling, like, because when you come in and do a book, you can say, oh, I'm going to throw everything out that came before me and rewrite the, universe. Or you can say, wow, look what came before. And let me just like weave right into it and build on it. And that's more what I like to do, and then, the regular Captain Marvel person is coming in after my 5 issues.
Okay.
So at the very end of the 5 issues, we'll get on the phone and I'll say, okay, do you want me to leave her poor, dead, at the top of the world, at the bottom of the world? I remember when I think I left some book, maybe it was Green Arrow, and who came? Oh, Jeff Lemire. I was like, you want me to leave him broke? You want me to leave what's Oliver Queen, right? Do you want me to leave him like rich or broke or whatever? And he's like, leave him broke,
You're another one of these writers where it's like, yeah, I don't even remember half the time till you mentioned something. I'm like, oh yeah, she did Green Arrow too. I did read that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you have your career and the stuff that, I don't particularly love my Green Arrow run because I think it was like the New 52. I didn't really know what was going on. I'd been living in Haiti teaching film, for Christ's sake. I was like, had become from 10 years in Hollywood and being a journalist. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I'll come back to comics. What's the New 52? And I think it was a great idea because, like we were talking about before, characters age.
Yes.
How do you keep them young? And the idea was, let's bring them back to their youth. So it was like, Ollie North, I think my directive was he's kind of like 007 and Elon Musk or Gates or something. And he has a lot of money. He doesn't know what to do with it. And he doesn't have his skills yet or something. And so you get, okay,
yeah, I mean, no, the run was good, but everyone I've talked to and the stuff I've heard, I just don't know if I don't know if it wasn't the communication was there or they didn't have like the idea fully fleshed out. There was basically like, okay, it's rebooted, go do whatever, but they didn't make sure that, your book lined up with someone else's book, they lined up with it. But
yeah, but I had a lot of fun anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the ideas were great. They're great. I mean, the execution was great. Yeah.
What was the guy's name? I think it was Freddie Williams, maybe. And we did this Harrow trilogy that was like dog fights and stuff. That was a lot of fun. I mean, you have fun, but you put the same energy into each project and you have fun. Some soar and some sink, but even the ones that sink, you have your like little mini pocket of fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they're so that's the beauty, is that there's something for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and I always like to remember who is it. It was sort of maybe the Television or some early band that was like, we only sold 5 records, but everybody who bought one started a band. So, there's sort of like, there's that mentality of like, okay, I wrote a story. It didn't get any traction. It didn't seem to get much love. But then there's always somebody out there that's like, wow,
I mean, like I said, I started reading Daredevil with your run, and I've read consistently up until right until today. So I mean, you created at least a lifelong Daredevil fan in me. So.
And perverted your mind and destroyed your brain.
Oh, I remember the exact issue that was my first issue. It was that the first Blackheart issue.
Oh yeah. That was a lot of fun. But that's also the artist. It's like when you're working with someone like Johnny Romita Jr., you can say, what if we do a crazy spiky, what if we, like, Johnny was the one who said, I don't want to draw Mephisto the way, like, just a guy in a spandex suit. He's the devil. And it's Johnny that came up with that insanely brilliant, like, the devil's fingers are everywhere. And in his Mephisto's fingers are everywhere. And it's like, that's like, that was to me so much better than just the spandex suit. And then we were able to kind of echo that with Blackheart and have him be this like spiky creature.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the artist. Like sometimes it's just that synchronicity of Johnny and I are both Italian Catholic kids. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was sort of like that story could only have come out of just like Captain America came out of Kirby and Simon during World War II when and they wanted to punch Hitler. They were two Jewish kids. They want to punch Hitler. It's sort of like when two lapsed Catholics get together and do a book called Daredevil.
I mean, it made sense to me because I think Mephisto even says to him at one point, "It's like, oh, you wear my colors, you dress as me."
Yes.
What so?
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of Daredevil. He's got that, you you can ignore the elephant in the room or you can address it. Like, your mother was a nun and you wear a devil suit. Yeah.
You're raised Catholic, yeah, you dress like the
Yeah,
devil. Yeah.
it's like,
Oh, okay, but just on a personal note, all right, I have to ask you about one more thing before I let you go. I
yeah,
was just
I have another
yeah.
today is Storm Press Day.
Oh yeah, because it
It
just
got me
basically
like wall
it's
to
release
wall.
day. Yeah, no, I was just gonna ask you any like interest in like maybe doing a series like this on Spider-Man because I was just reading coincidentally before we even scheduled this some of your rereading some of your Spider-Man recently, like the Mad Dog Ward stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's fun because back in the day, before the IP was valuable, you could do anything. Pre-movies, you could do anything. And so, Mike Mignola and I did a short story together that was, I don't remember what it was in, but it was basically, we said, you know what? Spider-Man's always lying. He lies to Aunt May, he lies to Mary Jane, he lies to his boss, he lies to everybody. And so I think it was called like You're a Liar, Spider-Man. But it was a story about how he never stops lying. He has to lie to everybody. I mean, picture your own life. Imagine you're lying to your girlfriend, your mother, your boss. People who lie all the time, they're kind of sociopaths. And so Mike Mignola and I did a story. And then when I got together with Cynthia Martin, who was doing the wonderful Star Wars series with Joe Duffy that I was the editor of, and I got to know Cynthia. And Cynthia, was just like so fascinated by mental illness, and and we were just like, let's do a Spider-Man series where we just like have him end up in an insane asylum and no one will believe he's Spider-Man. And it was like I've done a lot of work, a lot of volunteer work in various state institutions, and back in the when I was a kid, and they were really not run well back then.
Mhm.
There was a lot of scandals, and there's this joke that there are a lot of people that claim they're God or Jesus or someone. So the
Mhm.
shrinks in the asylum were just like, yeah, we got 5 Spider-Mans here. We got 5 guys claiming to be Spider-Man.
Because I mean, it was something different because it was like a three-part story. You don't see him in costume after the first issue.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and since it was just like a group thing, a group effort, and then Cynthia and I were like talking every day, and then Bill Sienkiewicz wanted to do the covers, and
Oh,
so it was just one of those fun kismet things that I don't know. I don't know because the IP is so valuable, and I love what they're doing with Spider-Man. I can't wait for the new animated one. Looks fabulous.
yes. Yes.
The multiple Spider-Mans is so great. But would you be able to do a story today where he's locked up in an asylum, or a story where he's being called a liar all the time? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, again, it was just the free range back then. You could do whatever you
Yeah.
pretty much whatever you wanted as long as you didn't kill him or something or have him kill someone. Yeah, so
Yeah, we were free range animals as opposed to factory farms today.
exactly. All right. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank
Bye.
you so much. For joining us. Everyone go buy Storm #1. It's
Storm
press
#1, and next month, Captain Marvel #1.
Yes, and like I said, I will bother you again when that's coming out. So,
Thank
yes.
you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Ann.
Bye.
Bye. All right, the great Ann Nocenti, everyone. Again, I love when I get to talk to my heroes. Like I said, I've been reading her work since like the late '80s, and I was looking for something big for yes, kids. This is the 300th episode of Capes and Lunatics. Lilith and nobody else could really join me because this was at a weird time which everyone was either at work or busy. So, but yes, I wanted a big interview for Capes and Lunatics episode 300. I think I hit it, and I scored a big one. Miss Ann Nocenti. Like I said, I will bother her again when her Captain Marvel comes out. All right, kids. So yes, send me. What are your favorite Ann Nocenti stories? Or hey, if you're a comic creator and you want to do an interview, always email me, capesandlunatics@gmail.com, or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And remember, now, once again, you can find everything Capes and Lunatics, episodes, social media, merchandise, our Patreon. Please subscribe to our Patreon. Nobody on the team gets paid for this. At least help us support this, all the quality programming we bring you in the non-quality programming. Find us at tubespace.io/Capes and Lunatics Podcast Network. That's tubespace.io/Capes and Lunatics Podcast Network. All right, everyone. Thank you. And once again, thank you to the great Ann Nocenti. All right. And well, for the 300th time by myself, well, for the 300th time, this time by myself, I have been your Capes, Ampersand, and Lunatics. All right. So, yes, big things coming up here. We'll have, I know, The Flash. I don't know if we'll have an episode after anything between now and then, but I know the Flash movie review will be coming up here on the Capes and Lunatics. We'll have the Across the Spider-Verse review on Ultimate Spider-Cast. Salty and Petty will have probably a couple movie reviews this summer. And, of course, comics, kids. All right. So, yes, go pick up Storm #1, kids. Do it now. All right. Good night.